Hi, I'm Jane Bregoli. Whenever I teach watercolor, I'm always asked about how to set up your watercolor palette. I'll talk to you about that today and other things like color wheel. We'll talk about warm and cool colors and how to mix colors. My three favorite watercolor artists are John Singer Sargent, Winslow Homer, and Andrew Wyeth. You can purchase this color wheel at your local art supply store. It is very handy. On one side, it will show you different variations of mixtures, what happens when you mix blue-violet and yellow-orange together, how they change. And on the other side, this you can move this part around. So this part right here shows if you're adding white to yellow-green, that's the color you'll get. If you're adding yellow to yellow-orange, that's the color you'll get. If you're adding red, this orange and red, you'll get a red-orange. And you can move this around to see what sort of colors that you will get when you add all different sorts of colors. So this is, it's kind of nice to have access to. It talks about the primary colors, the secondary colors, the warm colors and the cool colors. So the primary colors, as you learned in elementary school, are red, yellow, and blue. Out of the primary colors, you can get every color in the world. What about black? If you mix every color together, you should get black, every color. Did you know that there is a warm and a cool of each color? There's a warm red, a cool red, warm yellow, cool yellow. White is the only one that does not have a warm and cool color that I know of. I could be wrong about that. Every artist sets up their palette in a different way. So eventually you will figure out your own way of setting up your palette depending upon the types of paintings you do. If you do a lot of outdoor landscape paintings, you'll want to have your blues and greens together, central in your palette, because those are the colors that you'll mainly be using. I do a lot of portraits, and I have all my portrait colors in one section. So I have a cool red, which is permanent rose, a warm red, which is cadmium red, a warm yellow, cadmium yellow, the cool yellow, lemon yellow. I have white here, which I don't usually use at all. It's in the corner here, and it gets very dirty, so I stay away from white. If I need white, I'll try to make sure that I save the color, the white color of the paper, to use as my white. Instead of depending on the color white, I use the color of the paper. Then I have cadmium orange. I've had this particular tube of cadmium orange for 20 years. Obviously, I don't use it that often. So when I want to get a skin tone, I will mix my yellows and my reds and maybe a little bit of browns together to get my skin tones. So you don't need all of these colors. They can be an investment. And you can get away without purchasing orange very easily. And I have some blues, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, which is warm ultramarine, which is cool. Cobalt is right in the middle. And when you're doing skies and water, it's great to have a range of blues. This is phthalo purple. I would not buy this again because the phthalo colors stain your paper, and they also stain your palette. Your palette is plastic. If phthalo purple and phthalo green stains your palette, you know you can never get it out of your paper. You can never get it out of your watercolor paper. I don't recommend any of the phthalo colors for beginners. You can mix your own purples, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute using permanent rose and cobalt blue. You can get a great purple. Then I have Payne's Gray in the corner with black. See, I'm trying to keep these together. Payne's Gray is a bluish black, and black is more of a warm color black. And then I have sepia, burnt umber, raw umber, burnt sienna, and raw sienna. They are each cool and warm. So the difference between the siennas and the umbers is one is burnt, one is not burnt. And when they say burnt, they really mean burnt. It's the same pigment, but even though it's the same pigment, when it burns, it turns a different color. My particular palette has a lot of browns because I do a lot of wood and a lot of farm scenes, animals. So I have all my browns lined up in a row. You may not need all these browns. You can mix them up very easily. However, I don't like to spend a lot of time mixing. I get them out of the tube and voila, they are there, ready for me to use. I don't have to mix them. I prefer to use Winsor Newton paints. I use the professional grade. However, there is a student grade which you can purchase. And I get them at the local art supply store. Try not to get your paints at a drugstore or a discount store. You will not be happy with those paints. It is a waste of money. Take it from me. I have done it before. So I stick with Winsor Newton individual tubes. And when you put these on your palette, you're not going to use a lot. So I have seen some of my students fill the entire well with watercolor. You don't need to do that. You just take a little bit off, squirt out a little bit, and that's it. You can use it now it's wet. You can use it very easily when it's dry. It will dry by tomorrow. You put a little bit of water on the dry pigment and then it will turn into watercolor, which you can use. You don't have to take these out of your watercolor palette every time you paint. You can leave these on your palette as long as you need them. And like I said, this orange has been here for a long time. I don't really use it, even though I do a lot of portraits. And a good way for you to know what your paints will do is to label them. So I took a piece of tape, put it all around the side here, and as I put my paints on the palette, I looked at the color here, and labeled it right there. So that is a good way for you to know your paints, a good way for you to remember the color, what they're going to do. And I put the warm and cools next to each other because you have to make sense of all these colors. When they're labeled correctly, when they're put out on your palette in a way that makes sense to you, you will automatically be reaching in the right direction for your right color. You won't have to look at every single color on your palette to figure out what it is that you want. This palette is a John Pike palette. There are many others you can get. This is a rather expensive one. It comes with the cover. You can get a palette for $2 or $3. It doesn't matter what your palette looks like. As long as it's white so you can see the color and how the color changes as it mixes together. When you go to look for a palette, you want to find a palette that has enough space to mix. This entire area will be mixing. Will be a mixing area here. And you don't have to clean it off every time. My palette is pretty clean right now, but I will show you how to mix some colors. Here I have some colors that I'm going to show you how to mix. And I'm going to make a nice green by mixing cerulean blue and raw umber together. All right, so my raw umber is dry. I'm putting water on it from a clean water source. Try to keep this clean. If you need more water, dip it, don't swish. As my students in the past at Quinn Elementary School know, you dip, you don't swish. They will remember that if you ask them. Okay, so there's my raw umber. I'm going to fill in the first rectangle here. I'm not wetting the paper first. I just made a chart with a ruler and a pencil. So this is my pure raw umber with water. So I'm going to clean my brush and add some pure cerulean to the other end. So remember, cerulean is a warm color. Cerulean also is rather opaque. It has white in it. It has a white pigment in it. Most other colors are transparent. All right, so there's my pure cerulean. So I'm going to use my palette to show you how you can mix them. All right, so I just put some water in here. Okay, take a little bit of raw umber. And then when they're mixed together, you get a beautiful green. I love this mixture together. Raw umber and cerulean is a beautiful mixture. And Andrew Wyeth does this a lot. He uses these two colors in his paintings a lot. And Andrew Wyeth is one of my favorite artists. Who would have thought that you could mix these two colors together and get a beautiful green? And then, depending upon how much raw umber you use, you can get different shades of this beautiful green color. So you see I'm mixing it right on the paper. And this one will have more cerulean and less raw umber. Okay, these are some really beautiful shades of green. So you really don't have to purchase a green. You can eliminate that from your first round of watercolor purchases. As you see, you can mix green with these two colors. You can also mix green with blue and yellow. And you have your two yellows, a lemon yellow and a cadmium yellow to use. You can experiment with all the different colors, all the different yellows. You can experiment with all the different blues, and you can get a wide range of greens. So like I said, you will probably never have to buy green unless you really want to. All right, so you can just wipe your palette off, or you could let those colors dry and use them again maybe next time. So here I have my second color chart is permanent rose on one end and cobalt on the other end. So permanent rose is a good substitute for alizarin crimson. In the olden days, when I first started to paint, alizarin crimson was the recommended cool red to get. And come to find out a few years later that it is called a fugitive color. That means that when alizarin crimson is exposed to bright sunlight, it will disappear. It's a fugitive. You don't want to use alizarin crimson. Permanent rose is just fine. It's the same shade of red. It's a very cool red. Okay. See, I'm dipping, I'm not swishing. All right, cobalt on the other end. So like I said, cobalt is a medium blue color. It's a lot cooler than cerulean. So warm colors are red, yellow, orange, and some warm browns. So when you think of warm colors, you think of colors that make you feel warm, like what's warm? Fire. Fire is warm. So you're going to think that, okay, it's a warm color because it makes me feel warm. The same thing with cool colors. So what makes me feel cool? Water, ice. Those are the blues. Those are cool colors. Okay, see that beautiful purple that's been made by mixing permanent rose and cobalt. And you can make a whole range of purples. You don't have to go out and buy a purple. And you'll be, by mixing your own purples, you'll get quite a wide range of purples. So the next beautiful color I'm going to make is orange. You don't have to invest in a tube of orange paint. I'm using cadmium yellow. The cadmium colors are more opaque than transparent. So permanent rose is a transparent color. The cadmiums are more opaque. That means you can't see through them as easily. And then I'm using cadmium red. So now I've made a beautiful range of colors using very few tubes of paint. So don't be afraid to invest in a few tubes of paint, and I will have a list of warm and cool colors on my website, which you can download, and I will also have a color wheel that you can download too. And my website is www.janebregoli.com. I hope to see you there. And happy painting!